And thank you for joining us for 13 News Now at 5. I'm Janet Roach.
And I'm David Allen. A former Hampton police officer once recognized with a Medal of Valor is now behind bars. D'Angelo
Freeman is accused of helping to move drugs throughout Hampton roads and tampering with a witness.
13 News Now reporter Nico Clements is live in Hampton with those details.
David, we're learning more about Freeman, including how long he worked for the Hampton Police Division. Today I went to where Freeman lived, and people there told me Freeman said he had a family emergency and then disappeared. D'Angelo Freeman, whom investigators say was part of a drug trafficking operation in Hampton Roads, is behind bars. The former Hampton police officer is accused of plotting with 6 people to distribute drugs in the area. Investigators say Freeman also told his co-conspirators the name of an FBI confidential informant.
Yeah, it makes you think.
Police and investigators arrested Freeman in Idaho. Matt Trzynski lives in the apartment building next door.
Makes you sort of question who's working here, you know. It makes you sort of question the type of people that's supposed to be protecting us, who we're paying our taxes to.
Freeman started as a patrolman with the Hampton Police Division in 2010. A spokesman for the division said Freeman separated from city employment last November. Investigators say Freeman and the other people charged in the case worked together for several years. They were indicted in November, the same month Freeman left his job with the police division. Court documents say the group was involved in the trafficking of cocaine, heroin, and guns for cash.
It was very shocking to hear something like that.
And Freeman faces a minimum, or a maximum rather, of 10 years in prison, a minimum of 10 years in prison and a maximum of life in prison if convicted. And coming up at 6, I'll tell you what the Hampton Police Division is saying about the arrest. Live in Hampton, I'm Nico Clements, 13 News Now.
Right now, a Virginia Beach-based jet squadron is home after a tragic week. Members of VFA 213 flew into NAS Oceana today without 2 other aviators. Pilot Lieutenant Commander James Johnson and Weapons Systems Officer Lieutenant Caleb King were killed in a crash last week. Their jet went down during a training exercise in Key West. 13 News Now reporter Mike Gooding was at Oceana for the squadron's return, and he spoke with the commanding officer.
8 days after a crash claimed the lives of 2 of its aviators, VFA 213 returned home today to NAS Oceana.
Homecomings are usually a joyous occasion. This one was understandably very subdued. The Black Lions returned from training exercises in Key West, Florida, where the deadly crash happened last week. Mourning loved ones were there to greet them. The Navy asked that we not photograph that. Afterwards, VFA 213's commanding officer came back out before the cameras and spoke about Lieutenant Commander Johnson and Lieutenant King. He called them patriots, and he talked about the squadron somehow moving on now without them.
We continue on with our mission, and we get back to the business of naval aviation, standing ready to project combat power anywhere in the world as our country directs. To do anything less would disappoint the 2 heroes that we lost last week.
Commander Robb, who didn't take any questions from the media, said answers about the mishap will come in due time.
I understand the desire for all of us to know what happened in this terrible tragedy. I ask for your trust and patience as there is an active aviation mishap investigation being conducted by some of the finest professionals in the entire world.
Typically, Class A mishap investigations like this take 4 to 6 months to complete. In Virginia Beach, Mike Gooding, 13 News Now.
The families and squadron have given the Wingmen Foundation their full support in launching a fundraiser to help with current and future expenses. Find a link to donate on our website, 13newsnow.com. We now know the name of the man who was shot and killed in Norfolk yesterday morning. Police say William James White Jr. died outside his home on C Avenue. White was 52 years old. Police are not releasing any other details about White's death at this time, but they are asking you to call the crime line if you know anything about this. That number is 1-888-LOCK-YOU-UP.
Former Governor Douglas Wilder is suing Virginia Commonwealth University and top school officials. Wilder is a professor at VCU and has a school department named after him. He claims the dean of the Wilder School, John Cordino, harassed and mistreated Wilder's personal assistant. This allegedly happened in November while Wilder wasn't there. Wilder says the school's response has been inadequate. Accordino's lawyer says, quote, the allegations are totally false and baseless.
Norfolk Public Schools are reeling from the tragic death of high school student Damon Person. His is the latest of 5 deaths that have rocked the school division since the beginning of the year. 13 News Now reporter Megan Puryear is in the studio. And Megan, how is the district responding?
Janet, school officials put out a statement today following the Booker T. Washington student's death on Monday. It says that support is in place to assist students and staff as they cope. I talked with a clinical psychologist today about how that works.
Grief is a complicated and unpredictable phenomenon.
Norfolk Public Schools has lost 5 students and faculty members over the course of just 3 months. Clinical psychologist Dr. Jamel Mason says grief is tough to tackle.
You don't want to wallow in it, but at the same time you don't want to ignore it.
In a case of mistaken identity, Ocean Air Elementary School teacher Caroline Hendricks was shot on New Year's Eve. Mason says parents have a role to play if their child loses a teacher.
To be comforting, to let the child express themselves and talk about it, and then maybe ask questions or reassure the child.
In February, PB Young Elementary School student Skylar Alexander drowned at the oceanfront. Mason says losing a friend can be even scarier for a child.
The child may feel differently about it because it is a peer. They may take it more personally. Maybe it could happen to me, and be more fearful in that way.
The day after Skylar's death, Assistant Principal LaDawn Duran of Norview Middle School was killed in a car accident. Mason says trauma in a short span of time is impactful.
And when you have these tragic events happen in such a short period of time, so close to you, that's adding to the weight that you already have on you. So you can imagine a person might become even more sad.
2 days after Duran's death, Kashawn Alexander, a Lake Taylor High School student, was shot and killed.
With the stages of grief, and you don't go through them in a linear fashion. Anger is a piece of it. Some people, for example, with the shootings, that might be where they start.
As for Person's case, police arrested 2 juveniles in connection with his murder. The school district statement went on to say that as they process this latest death, quote, lives, families, and loved ones of 3 young people have been forever changed. In studio, Megan Puryear, 13 News Now.
Conversation on whether to expand Medicaid and how is back on the table with Governor Ralph Northam's proposed budget. Senate Republicans oppose it, and Governor and the GOP-controlled House are for it. Today, Secretary of Finance R.B. Lane stopped by Norfolk to detail the proposal. He says by expanding Medicaid, the federal government would reimburse the state 90% of $2 billion. The governor is proposing taxing hospitals to cover the remaining 10%.
Those individuals now are coming into hospitals and being covered with no means to pay, and so or limited means to pay. This will help them do that. That benefits the hospitals.
The Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association has historically opposed this type of proposal, but a spokesman says they are willing to discuss the possibility. Lawmakers go back in session to talk the budget on April 11th. The state has until July 1st to get that budget worked out.
Now on the federal level, the government shutdown deadline is tomorrow at midnight. Right now, the Senate is discussing a $1.3 trillion spending bill. It boosts funds for defense and domestic programs, but there's no mention of the DACA program. The House has already passed the bill.
Here's what's not included in that spending plan: the cuts to the National Weather Service, which the Trump administration had proposed. 13 News Now was first to tell you about a plan to cut hundreds of forecaster positions. Now we've learned Congress is going in an entirely different direction. Investigative reporter Laura Geller joins us with the new information in this 13 News Now investigation.
Well, a dangerous move. That's what we told you meteorologists were saying about the Trump budget plan to cut almost 250 forecaster jobs at the National Weather Service. Tonight, those same meteorologists from our investigation are celebrating the Congress plan, which rejects those cuts and restores funding. They were quick to point out the statement that goes along with the Appropriations Act. It references stories like ours and reads, continuous reports of management and staffing challenges across the NWS are unacceptable. Our investigation showed you the plan included decreased hours at certain local offices, possible coverage here by meteorologists hundreds of miles away, and other trade-offs. But the bipartisan budget actually increases funding compared to last year and is almost $100 million more than what the president requested.
The Weather Service already is bare boned. It's just barely getting along, and any more cuts would have just been the straw that broke the camel's back. So I think that's very good news.
We've also learned about other spending priorities included for the National Weather Service. We'll have more details on those on 13 News Now at 6. Laura Geller, 13 News Now.
Tomorrow, Governor Ralph Northam is expected to pay Hampton Roads a visit. He's hosting a roundtable for female veterans. Is at the Virginia Beach Tidewater Community College campus at 10 a.m. Earlier this month, Governor Northam declared this the first Women Veterans Week. The governor said the goal is to honor the more than 100,000 female veterans in the Commonwealth.